About 3 weeks ago, one of my viewers asked me how to use a semicolon, and my answer was that it would take more than a YouTube comment to explain it. But that's a really good question because the semicolon is considered an advanced type of punctuation. Not all native speakers know how to use them, by the way. So if you can use them correctly in your essays or in your Task 1 responses, then you will impress the examiner. The first situation, which is a situation where it's necessary to use a semicolon, is to separate list items when some or all items contain a comma. For example, from one of my sample answers for Task 1, the remainder was divided almost evenly between the other 3 appliance categories: ovens, comma, kettles, comma, washing machines, 17.5%, semicolon, lighting, comma, TV and radio, 15%, semicolon, and vacuum cleaners, comma, food mixers and electric tools, also 15%. To help you understand this list, you can see that there are basically 3 groups. And in each group, you have different items which are all separated by commas. That's why you need a semicolon, because you need to separate each group from the other group. Practice using the semicolon by answering this question. Correct the following sentence by replacing some of the commas with semicolons. The 3 most livable cities in the world in 2018, according to Mercer, were Vienna, Austria, Zurich, Switzerland, and Auckland, New Zealand. Here we have what should be 3 different cities, and each city has the country after it. So you would use semicolons after the country before the next city. Vienna, Austria is a place, Zurich, Switzerland is another place, and Auckland, New Zealand is the 3rd place. The second situation where you can use a semicolon is before a second sentence that builds on the first. And it's optional to use a semicolon in this situation. For example, in 1999, there was not a significant difference between the 5 countries in terms of the amount of coffee sold. Semicolon. Figures ranged from 0.8 million euros, that was Sweden, to 3 million euros, which was Switzerland. Normally, people would use a full stop where there is a semicolon, but you can use a semicolon because this second sentence builds on the first sentence. It extends the information given in the first sentence. It doesn't change the topic at all. Another example, not only is there pressure to maintain or exceed the past performance in their chosen arena, but aspects of their private lives and behaviors are scrutinized by the public. Such pressures lead many high-profile celebrities to engage in illicit substance abuse or other risky or unhealthy activities as a form of escape, semicolon. Some even pay the ultimate price by dying from an overdose. Again, that last sentence is an extension on the previous sentence. Which of the following full stops can be replaced by a semicolon? Recycling takes effort. Only those who have both the environmental conscience and the resources, including time and facilities, will bother to do it. In Hong Kong, for example, recycling collection bins are sparsely scattered around the city. Which of these 2 full stops, this one or this one, can be replaced by a semicolon? The next example, as much as it would be convenient to think so, things are never black and white in the real world. There are always contributing factors to a crime, such as a person's intellectual capacity, mental health, and cultural or family background. These need to be taken into account to ensure fairness in sentencing across all cases involving a certain type of crime, and a judge is the most qualified person to do this. Okay, and the answers are in red. Here we can see a semicolon followed by a lowercase o because this extends the first sentence. It's basically an elaboration of the first sentence, an explanation, let's say. And in the second example, here's the semicolon followed by lowercase t. The first sentence is a blanket statement which could be applied in any context, and the second sentence relates that idea to the specific context that we're in, which is talking about crime. So crimes are never black and white, basically, and we can explain that by giving a little bit more detail. The next situation to use a semicolon is required, and it's before sentences that omit a word or phrase because it is implied from the previous sentence. Here are some examples that I've taken from my sample answers. All four saw increases in popularity such that by the end of the 12-year period, 98% of homes had a TV, semicolon, 94% a refrigerator, semicolon, 80% a washing machine. That's equivalent to saying by the end of the 12-year period, 98% of homes had a TV, comma, 94% had a refrigerator, comma, and 80% had a washing machine. Using the semicolons, we were able to remove the duplicate verb. We have the verb in the first clause, we don't need to repeat it in the second and the third if we use a semicolon. We were also able to remove the final coordinating conjunction and. The same would apply to the coordinating conjunction or, etc., all the other coordinating conjunctions. You could remove those if you use a semicolon. And another example, in descending order of absolute reduction in miles, the distance the average English person travelled by local bus dropped from 429 to 274, semicolon, on foot from 255 to 237, semicolon, by bicycle from 51 to 41. Quite a few words and phrases have been removed from the second and third clauses, which would have been duplicated from the first clause. You can imagine if we didn't use the semicolon, then we would have to include that phrase in the second and third clause. We'd have a comma here, and then we'd say, the distance the average English person travelled on foot, and then we'd have the word dropped. We wouldn't have this comma, and then we continue from 255 to 237. We have another comma here, and then we would say, and the distance the average English person travelled by bicycle, again we'd say dropped from 51 to 41. That would be a very long sentence. So using the semicolon, we were able to keep this sentence rather short. Check you understand how to use the semicolon in this type of situation by fixing the following sentences by replacing some commas with semicolons. That can be fixed by replacing 3 of those commas with semicolons. Other levels of qualifications had varying, albeit lesser degrees of discrepancy, some in favour of males, comma, others, comma, females. That can be fixed by replacing one of the commas with a semicolon. Pause the video if you need more time before I give you the answers. The answers are in red. Here you can see there's a semicolon, 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 and the last one is here. And the fourth and final situation where you can use a semicolon is before a conjunctive adverb. And this one again is optional, just like situation 2 was. For example, to achieve a sense of durable fulfillment, a person needs to live according to his or her personal requirements. However, whether this eventuates normally depends on many factors beyond their control, such as their access to education, physical appearance, stature, intelligence, socioeconomic status, personality, and so on. Normally, we would use a full stop. Again, this is optional. If you like, you can use a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb. Another example, on the one hand, these have given people the ability to establish and cultivate relationships through more media-rich and regular contact with new acquaintances, semicolon. On the other hand, they can create a serious distraction that causes existing closer relationships to suffer. You can probably guess we're talking about social media. Again, we would normally use a full stop here to end this sentence before starting a new sentence. Remember, start a new sentence with an uppercase O, but you can use a semicolon before this sentence because it starts with a conjunctive adverb, which follows on from the previous sentence. Check you understand how to use the semicolon in the final situation. In each paragraph, replace one full stop with a semicolon. Next example. Which full stops can be replaced by semicolons? One full stop in each paragraph. And here are the answers. You can see it's here because the first sentence is talking about British students who did not speak a language other than English, and the second sentence is talking about the same group of people, but the proportion had fallen a decade later. And in the second example, it's here because this one is the only conjunctive adverb in the paragraph. If you like the video, please click the like button. Again, if you need more IELTS tips, I have a free blog on my website, hongkongieltsteacher.com. The link is in the video description. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.